I am a high school dropout, but managed to have a second chance in night school. At the end of the lessons, sometimes I stay speaking a little bit with a friend of mine. Then I walk home. Takes around 15 minutes. While I was walking, I noticed on the other side of the street, in the bus station, a man. He was just staring at me. I tried to pretend that I hadn't seen him and started walking home. As I walked home, I kept looking back, thinking of that man that was looking at me at the bus station. I arrived home and went directly to my bedroom window and checked outside. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't followed, and to my relief, I wasn't. I still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next night, while I was walking home, I started hearing footsteps behind me. The footsteps got louder. I looked back, and the bus station guy was running towards me. I started running. When I arrived home, I went directly upstairs to my bedroom as I did the day before. But this time, the guy was in front of my house, just standing there in the dark, looking at me. I was shocked to see that the guy had followed me home. I crouched near the window. I decided to take the phone out and call the cops. But when they arrived, the guy wasn't there anymore. A patrol car stayed in front of my house all night. I couldn't sleep at all. I couldn't sleep. The next night, I decided to stay home and skip school. I was on the couch, watching TV, when I heard a knock. I looked to the window, and I felt a huge weight in my body. The man that had been stalking me was at the window. He was pale and had a deformed eye. I ran upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and called the cops. While I was waiting for them, I heard glass breaking from downstairs. The guy was probably inside the house now. I started crying. I thought to myself, I'm about to die. All of a sudden, a loud bang on my bedroom door. He was trying to get in, but luckily, I heard the police siren. They entered the house and started shouting to the crazy guy to get down. The cops took the guy away. That night, I could not sleep one bit. Since that incident, I've never had problems again. But there isn't one day that I don't think about it.
One day, me and a friend of mine got invited to a party. It was a huge deal since we don't have regular parties around our area. While I waited for her, I did my makeup, and when she arrived, we called a taxi. It was a 25-minute car ride. We went speaking all the way there. We were just so excited. We haven't been in a party for so long. The taxi dropped us off, and we started walking to the house. It was not close to the main road, so we had to walk a bit through the woods. As we got closer, we could see a fire going on the back of the house. We went directly there. We started looking around it, and I felt a little odd. We saw a large group of men, and these men didn't look the kind of people you want to party with. Some of them even had guns. As we walked through them, I asked, "Hi guys, so where is the rest of the people?" One of the guys said on a very deep voice, "Everyone is here, sweetie," and made a creepy smile to us. I instantly felt the chills. Me and my friend looked at each other nervously. We asked where the toilet was, as we wanted to hide from this group. One of the guys points us to a darker area inside the garage. I couldn't believe that inside there is a toilet. As we are both inside, my friend and I stare at each other, not really knowing what to do. We just want to get out of there. We speak with each other, whispering. we hear a knock on the door and a voice saying, "Hey ladies, everything well inside?" We said nothing and stood in silence for a few seconds. I instantly could feel the chills around my spine, and I definitely wanted to get out of that place. That's when they started pounding the door. My friend takes out her phone and calls the cops. All of a sudden, we heard so many voices in front of the door. We said nothing, standing there in silence, looking at each other, fearing. My friend's hands were shaking, sweating. All of the screams get louder. Voices are calling out for us to come out. The police arrived with 3 cars. Some of the guys escaped, but they still managed to arrest the majority of them. The cops told us they wanted to kidnap us and ask for ransom to our families. Luckily, we escaped this alive, but we still remember that night.
There was a time my parents went on a trip to Europe. I was taking care of their house. I was home for the summer from school anyway, so it was fine. I had been there for a few weeks and it was pretty quiet. I just went to work, came home, had some time with my friend, enjoying the house to ourselves and whatnot. But one night, I was just laying there watching TV when I heard this really weird, low whistling sound coming from the window that was behind the couch. It struck me as sort of odd, and I just shrugged it off. But then it happened again. It totally sounded like it was a person standing up against the window whistling. I looked out the window and obviously there was no one there, so I figured I should go check it out. If it was something like the wind on the siding, I should probably fix it because that would get annoying. So I walked out into the backyard. The backyard in my parents' house is really pretty. It's sparse, but sort of forest that leads to a road on the other side. So I looked at the house and didn't see anything, but then I heard the sound again. It was coming from the woods in the back. I was pretty creeped out at this point, and of course I couldn't see anything in the woods, so I hurried back through the door and I locked it behind me. I never really heard that sound again for the next few days, until one night, I was asleep in my room, and I could have sworn I was awakened by the whistling sound against my second floor window. I listened hard, and it was dead silent. So I decided I should go ahead and look out the window. I did that whole thing where I crept super slowly towards it, and just sort of peeked through it. Outside my window, there was a man just standing there. I was really sleepy, so I can't know how much of this I'm misremembering. But he was just sitting there staring at me. I was completely frozen, and slowly, the man pursed his lips, and I could hear that whistle again. It was crystal clear. It made me feel like crying. I tore myself away from the window and I hid under my covers. The next night, I insisted that my friend stay with me. He did, and of course, nothing happened. He figured that I was just tired and delirious, and maybe I was right. It gets kind of anticlimactic here, but I didn't hear it for another week or so. And when I did, it was just one small whistle, just happening randomly, coming from a wall or something like that. It just happens every week or so, and it always freaks me out tremendously. To this day, I would never stay in that house alone anymore.
Growing up, I used to live with my grandmother. We lived in a rural area, pretty far from the nearest town. I used to go to bed early, but my grandmother would stay a little longer downstairs. One night, my grandmother was watching TV when she started hearing a knock at the door. Strange. Who could that be at this hour? She got up and started walking to the door. She opened the door. No one. Maybe they went away after she took some time to answer. She went back inside. She sat down on the couch a little more, watching TV, but always with the feeling that something was not right, as if someone else was there with her. A few minutes have passed and my grandmother was about to go to sleep when she listened to stepping noises from upstairs. She went up to check if everything was okay. She could hear noises coming from the bedroom, as if someone was going through her things. She carefully peeked inside the bedroom, and that's when she was filled with horror. She saw a man going through her drawers. She hid behind the wall and was now breathing very fast. She had no idea what to do, and it was only a matter of time until he would come out and find her. In those few seconds, she started thinking about how to pick me up from the bed and take me outside the house without being seen. But that's when she started listening to heavy breathing behind her. She turns around and she sees him. Turns out, my grandmother managed to grab the lamp that was in the table and smashed it in the guy's face. He was knocked out. While he was on the ground, my grandmother called the police and they took him in. This happened 10 years ago. I am now in my first year of college. My grandmother still lives in the same house. Although I don't have the same contact with her anymore, sometimes we still speak about this night and how it would be different if she hadn't the courage to react the way she did.
About a week ago, I was scrolling through the dark web looking at the same old stuff I usually do. I then came across a link called Sleeveless Ace. I was curious, so I clicked on it and checked it out. It was a live stream of a man who calls himself Sleeveless Ace. He was dressed kind of like a blackjack dealer, wearing a black waistcoat and a bow tie. He was also wearing a mask, a creepy jester mask, like something you would see from the movie The Purge. He was set down at a table with a stack of playing cards that were face down. He then lifted the first card from the deck. It was a 6 of hearts. He then spoke saying, "Please place your bets." I didn't understand what he meant by this, but people in the comments section were placing their bets along with live or die. I was still confused. That was until Sleeveless Ace went behind some kind of curtain and brought out a man who looked to be in his 30s that was tied up to a hospital bed. He then pulled out an electric drill and proceeded to drill into the man's legs. He drilled 3 holes in and around each of the man's kneecaps, while he screamed in agony. You could see the man screaming, crying, and letting out long breaths. Sleeveless Ace then turned back toward the camera and said, "Whoever bet live, congratulations. You have won this round." I then understood what was going on. Whatever number the card was, the viewers would bet if the victim would survive the amount of times of torture as the card number. The next card that was drawn was an Ace of Clubs. Sleeveless Ace then said, "As you all know, an ace means a torture special." He then asked what the viewers would prefer: A, a rat in a bucket while he held a live rat by its tail, or B, sulfuric acid, and held in his other hand a jar of acid. The viewers then voted on a viewer poll, and the rat won 51 to 49%. Sleeveless Ace then put the rat in the metal bucket, strapped it to the man's stomach, and proceeded to heat the bucket with a blowtorch. I will never forget the screams that man let out as the rat clawed and ate his way through his stomach. I sat there feeling like I was about to throw up while I watched and listened to this poor guy scream blasting through my earplugs. The rat eventually came out through the man's throat. The man obviously died because he bled out. Sleeveless Ace said, "Thank you everyone for playing," and the stream cut off. Like I said before, I've been on the dark web and seen some pretty edgy, weird stuff. But I've never come across anything like Sleeveless Ace or his messed up torture games.
My wife and I moved to a new house not long ago. We were still getting used to our new home, and we were very happy. We had finally found a home of our own. One night, while watching a movie on the couch, my wife and I started listening to a noise. It sounded like a knock. We made nothing of it. The next night, I was alone downstairs watching TV when I listened to the knocking again. This time, I checked my front door. I took a look outside, but there was no one on the street. I tried the back door, but nothing. I started going crazy with this knocking. It sounded like it was coming from the inside, but what was it? I tried to go back to sleep again, but I was still bothered by not finding out what that sound was. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty, so I went downstairs to the kitchen. While I was drinking a glass of water, I started hearing something. It was the knocking again. This time, I had a different feeling. I felt cold. I could see the vapor of my breath in the air. I also felt a terrible nausea. Then the knocking came again, but this time, it sounded even closer. It sounded from behind me. I gained some courage and looked back, but I saw nothing. I was sure something was behind me. Maybe I was imagining things, I thought to myself. I went to go back to sleep, but as I reached the stairs, I looked up and I saw a shadowy figure looking down to me. The silhouette looked like a man, but his eyes, they were a bright red. I froze looking at it until I started feeling myself black out. The next morning, my wife found me sleeping on the floor. She asked me what happened, and I told her everything. She believed me and told me to pack everything because we were going to her parents' house. We moved to a different house and hired a moving company to bring the things from the home. My wife didn't even want to get near it. I understand why. I never saw the shadowy figure again.
I am now 22 years old, but at the time of this story, I was 13. I grew up with a very religious family. My mother raised us alone. She was a very strong woman and very devoted to her religion. Me and my brother were raised to believe as well. Church every Sunday, giving grace before meals, and praying every night before sleeping. My brother was always the strongest kid between us. He would protect me in school from others. I was nothing like him, and there were times I would question my faith, at least until one day. My brother got sick, and my mother told him to stay in bed, thinking this would be nothing serious. After 2 days in bed resting, he just got worse, so my mother decided to call a doctor. After the examination, the doctor said that he needed bed rest, and if he got worse, he should go to the hospital. Well, the next day, my brother did get worse. Much worse. He was pale, and he could barely speak. My mother started praying and said that God would make my brother recover from whatever he had. My mother called a priest to come and give a blessing to my brother, but what happened next just goes beyond explanation. As soon as the priest started praying, my brother's body started reacting to it. He started to twitch. His arms and legs, and quickly his whole body was twitching. My mother screamed and her face got pale. I grabbed her arm and tried to hold her tight. As the priest continued, my brother's eyes got red. Slowly, behind him, the cross on the top of the bed just started rotating upside down. My mother holded me even tighter now. I was scared and I didn't understand what was going on. The priest's voice was getting louder. All of a sudden, my brother started screaming. His voice sounded distorted. We had to cover our ears. I never holded someone so hard. I continuously heard her praying to God, mumbling words, asking God for mercy and help. And then, silence. The priest stopped. He seems to be exhausted. My brother was breathing. His skin started getting colored again. And after a few minutes, he opened his eyes, and we could see they were normal again. My mother, who was still holding me tight now, whispered with more confidence, "Son, is this you?" She let go of me and tried to approach my brother. "Mama?" We holded him tight and we saw him smiling for the first time in a few days. We asked him what happened, but he said he didn't remember the last few hours. Sometimes, when my mother is not there and I'm alone with my brother, I can hear him laughing.